Hello, and welcome back to the Business Brunch. I am here with my esteemed co-hosts, Sarah Farmer and Vanessa Ashworth, and we are here to give you that support, that energy, that creative inspiration for those who work from home, full-time, part-time, and just need a bit of a collaboration to really connect, learn, and evolve. So drop a note in the comments. Let us know where you're from and if you're open to connecting. And we are here to serve. Now, we've got a very interesting presentation today, really informative, and it's a carryover from last week's. So the topic is onboarding, and Sarah is our resident expert on that. And if you missed last week's program, we'll give a bit of a recap just of key points, but to see the bulk of it, go back and catch our replay if you missed it. Because I think we had last week, we had to skip a week because of the Queen's funeral. So because it's been 2 weeks, you might have not been able to catch the previous one. So it's there for you. But before we get into that, we're going to take a few minutes and say hello to folks and also to get a bit of a summary of what people have been up to in the last couple of weeks. So I think, Vanessa, you've been doing a bit of creative effort as evidenced by the fabulous wings behind you.
Yes. I'm turning into a butterfly. So I think most of you probably, if you follow my content, although I've been a bit quiet, I'm preparing for a festival of light at Rivington, the charity that I support. And at the moment, my house has been turned into a workshop, basically. There are lanterns all over. I've got a solar system in the living room. You mentioned the Queen's funeral. I built that lantern whilst watching the funeral, using the crown as my inspiration and mend it as I went along. And then, yes, Sundays. So yesterday I had 20 people to come and help out to build lanterns. So I built these wings, and then I had people here who were kind of wrapping all the UV wool in. And at night time, with a UV wool behind it, it's just going to explode. It's going to look amazing.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, so there's the whole house is. I've got a rabbit downstairs, 6 foot rabbit, 6 foot long.
Is his name George?
It's Peter Rabbit, actually. He's got a little blue jacket and satchel. But yeah, the house has been completely taken over. So yes.
So if anybody is interested in going to Rivington and seeing the Festival of Light, is there sold out already?
Sold out. 4,200 tickets sold.
Wow.
Amazing. So you'll be putting it on the pictures on LinkedIn, because we had them last year and it was gorgeous.
Yeah, and it'd be bigger and better than last year. So yeah, I will.
So if you're not following Vanessa, even more reason to follow Vanessa now, and then share all those amazing pictures with all your contacts as well. And Sarah, how about you? What have you been up to?
Nowhere near as creative. Well, actually, that's not true.
That's not true. It's a different style of creative.
Okay, different style of creative. I know I've talked about this a lot, and I've talked about my book an awful lot. And this weekend, and I must not cry as I'm saying this because it's such a relief, it's now ready to go to manuscript. For manuscript to go into publishing. And I can't tell you how much of a relief this. I actually slept last night properly for the first time in a long time. It's been such a labour of love. I've got to call it a labour of love. And the other thing I've been doing is looking after a very sick child. I have a very, very poorly boy who has the most horrible flu. I think loads of kids have got it at the moment, but yeah, it's really knocked him for sick. So I'm just tottering up and downstairs with trays of tea and more tea and things like that. So it's been a really exciting weekend. And what about you, cake eating fiend?
Oh no, just this past weekend I had a friend's birthday party, and it was, as per usual for me, it was a bit of a creative theme. So my friend has a very distinctive look. Basically, if you imagine Ariel from Disney's Little Mermaid, my friend looks a whole lot like Ariel.
Oh, wow.
And so a group of us on the sly decided to all show up at her party, which was supposed to be a costume party, and we were supposed to dress as inspiring figures or something like that. We all decided to dress like her and like different personas of her from her Instagram feed. So we all showed up in red wigs and in the type of dresses that she wears and everything else. So there were 12 Joes running around at the weekend.
But there was also a lot of cake.
There was also a lot of cake. Yeah, we've got a couple of people in that friend group who are really good at baking. So yeah, I love cake. I try not to eat too much of it, but yeah, I couldn't resist. So yeah.
We've got quite a few people popped in.
Yes.
Hi, so
Welcome back, everybody.
Would you mind, Judith? I think the dog's just going mad. So can you look after the comments?
Yeah, I'll go through
but I'm glad to see what the dog's doing.
All right, look at who we have here. We have Danny. Welcome back, Danny. It's been good to see you. From the shed quarters in beautiful Stoke.
It's a really nice shed he's in as well. I was on a Zoom with him the other day. It looks like a proper room and everything.
Awesome. And welcome, Kimberly. Nice to see you. One of my connections there. And she's on the breakfast side of the brunch, definitely.
Okay.
In Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We've got Leon from sunny, is it West Stoughton? Is that
West
how you say
Stoughton?
it?
So I can take over now. I'm back. So Leon knows me. He's one of my connections, and West Stoughton is just next to Bolton. So hello, Leon, and thank you for your support. Welcome. So Andy David is back as well, and yeah, good idea to recap.
I will do.
Kimberly, where is it?
Sorry. Let me just below. Yes, there we go. Sorry.
So Kimberly says yes to the Festival of Lights. Yeah, it's going to be amazing. And Andy says, I'm genuinely amazed and impressed with the massive lantern. It's going to look amazing. Just wait till we paint it. Oh my goodness. I'm going to put all little lights all around the edges. It's going to be amazing. Andy also says, congratulations on the milestone with your book, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you.
And yeah, we'll all look forward to be able to read it in the future. We've got a few.
It's such an emotional investment too, a book or like a PhD thesis or something. It's not like baking a cake or something that's, you put your love into it, but then it's done, in a short order. This has been a massive project.
I've made a really big deal of it, I have to say.
Rightfully so.
I've made big work of it, but it's one hell of a thing to do. Yeah. And we have a new person popped in.
So Kishore says hi.
Hello.
We're all up to date.
Cool.
Great. So let's do that recap, Sarah, and then we can lead into your main discussion point. Now, just so everybody knows, Sarah's going to be kicking off with kind of a TEDx type presentation, just to kind of get the concepts out there. And then as you have questions or concern, or topics you'd like to discuss, put them in the chat. We're not ignoring you. We will come to them towards the end, because it's important for the continuity for everybody to get these concepts correct, that we just kind of get through it in one go and then loop back with specific query points. All right. So over to you, Sarah.
Okie dokie. So welcome, everybody. If you are new to the show, my name is Sarah Farmer, and I'm an executive coach and leadership mentor. I specialise in mindset and skill set development for senior leaders and executives. But over the last 2.5 years, I've really been focusing on helping leaders take control of imposter syndrome. So you might have seen me quite active on LinkedIn on that topic, but also helping people returning from redundancy into new roles make sure that they exceed their onboarding outcomes. So senior leaders returning, but also those leaders going into their first ever senior leadership role, because that can feel pretty scary too. There's a lot of expectation. And as I've just said, or we've just talked about, I've written a book on this. It's not just on this, but it's for people who want to manage their mindset and know what skills to use to make sure they can exceed their onboarding outcomes. So look out for that. But today we're talking about how we can improve on the pretty shoddy failure rates. What I'm going to do from last week is just remind you that those are currently between 50 to 76%, which is huge. At best, it's 1 in 2. I also shared the cost of that And this is the actual monetary cost, but there's also the physical and mental health costs we need to think about as well. Because it makes people feel very ill when they're in an onboarding failure situation. Not just the employee, but the employer too. It's really stressful. So there's all these additional costs that we don't necessarily consider when we think about things failing in an onboarding situation. So at a leadership level, you are looking at around a £760,000 cost minimum. And that can run into the millions when you're looking at really senior leaders in big global organizations. So it's not a small thing, it's something we do need to work on from a human perspective and from a business perspective as well. So Melinda's already said we've looked at this already in quite a bit of detail, but what we looked at last time was what can we do or what can others do in other roles before we even get to an onboarding situation. So we looked at what recruiters can do, what job seekers can do, what hiring managers can do, and bits around that as well, and the skills that you might need to help you in those situations. So please do take a look back at that. It's on all of our feeds. If you can't find that, you can go to my YouTube channel and it's on there as well. It's littered with the Business Brunch stuff. So you'll find it from the last video that was done. But let's crack on with today and focus on what we're trying to achieve, which is once you're in an onboarding situation, how can we make it less likely that there will be a fail or a perception of failure, so we can reduce that 1 in 2 or worse to 1 in 10. Better, even more than that, maybe 1 in 20. Wouldn't that be cool? My mission is to get it down to 1 in 10 for the people that I work with. And if it can be better than that, awesome. But let's get to that first. So we're going to look at what the problems are when we're onboarding first, and then look at what we can do about it. But where are these problems coming from? The first thing to say is that there's usually an elapsed period of time between the yay, I got the job, and yay, we've given someone the job, to actually walking through the door. And in that time, your brain starts to jump in. And I'm going to look at this from 2 perspectives, from an employee perspective and an employer perspective. So from an employee's point of view, what are they thinking and worrying about? They are thinking, okay, what if I fail? And it isn't just what if I can't do my job and a bit of imposter syndrome coming in. It's what if I'm the sort of the last person in and the first person out, especially right now where the world's changing so rapidly and jobs are being lost and created and organizations are coming in and out. And so there's a lot of fear associated with that. People are wondering, what if they've chosen the wrong job? At the time it seemed brilliant, but did I ask this? Did I check that? What if I don't fit in? What if the culture's not right? And then there's also often, very, very often, and this is one of the biggest problems, is a lack of certainty around the truth behind what I'm going to be doing, how I do it, and why I'm doing it. And where there's a lack of certainty, there's going to be some fear. So I don't know if people just want to add in here, what are some other things employees worry about when they're starting a new job? I mean, I'm not going to ignore the fact that people are excited as well. And some people remain very excited and only have this little bit of doubt running alongside, which is cool. They're not the ones that usually end up in an onboarding failure situation. So that's why I'm focusing on this. But ladies, gentlemen, people of the jury, any other things that are high on the list of things that employees worry about when starting a new job?
Well, I would think that sometimes the fear of repeating old unhealthy patterns could come in, where people say, oh, well, in the past, I've taken on too much work and I've not set effective boundaries. I don't want that to happen again. I think that's something that I see a lot of people kind of stressing over when they're one of those kind of quietly competent people, the people who usually just crack on and get everything done. And, often to their detriment, ultimately, because that's something you might be aware of, but not want to carry forward, and learning to set those effective boundaries in a brand new situation with new people can be tricky and worrying.
So yes, this is a really important point for those who have just come through redundancy and are starting new roles again, or maybe It's the same sort of feeling, though, for those who are coming back from ill health or maternity. Not that they're the same thing, but they have similar feelings attached to them. Is I've been out for a while, but it's What if I wasn't as good in the old job? Maybe that's the reason I lost my job. Or what if I'm not as good as I thought I was, and I am repeating things that are going to cause me to fail? I don't even know what those things are, because most people haven't been coached or supported or given enough feedback to know what they're good at and what they could do even better. Very good point. Danny's got one.
Yeah. So Danny says there are so many negative stories on LinkedIn about offers being revoked, and there's a niggling worry there that the role isn't official until it's official.
Yeah, and so it's a good point. And so that bit between yes and day one, what if that's what's starting a lot of this fear? Is what if it doesn't actually start? What if they change their mind? What if it doesn't appear? I didn't know that it was kind of rampant that was happening, but I know that is a thing.
Well, that and the sort of you don't want to think it's bait and switch, but a lot of times job descriptions, let's say, are maybe produced by HR teams and not well vetted, and they're very generic. What if the jobs, people tend to think also, what if the job I've accepted isn't the job they're expecting me to do? And what happens if I show up and it turns out that this job is completely not what I want to do? It's not what was advertised. Then what?
Exactly. And this is exactly why this lack of certainty comes in, is we know everyone was, and we talked about this in the last show, everyone's on their best behavior when they're dating. When we're in an interview situation and we're all trying to be our very best and eating with our manners and everything, and then all gloves and everything come off when you go into the job. It's like, right, welcome to what's really happening, and we don't know what that is. We don't know the reality of that, and also the employer doesn't know the reality of us as the employee, because we've been on our best behavior too. So I've just seen Danny's.
I don't think it's rampant, but social media can skew our perception of what's really happening. That's true. I was going to say as well, like you said about the whole dating thing, when you're going through the interview process, you are on your best behavior, you're showing your best self. And then obviously you've got to go 9 to 5 in there all day with people, and you get the reality, your reality and theirs. And there's the whole thing as well, and we talked about this a bit last week as well, it's that whole, when you start a new job, you've promised all this in the interview. I can do this, I can do that. I'm going to, lead you here. But you've also got to do that. You've got to prove your worth straight away, but also you've got to learn the business straight away. You don't want to upset everyone straight away by saying, you've been doing it all wrong, but now I'm here to save you. I mean, oh my God, it's a minefield, isn't it?
It is a minefield. And as you're saying it, I have this picture of just being stretched. God, my face is good for this. But you're just stretched in every direction. So it's no surprise that it's a little bit stressful, and people do have some anxiety, some very normal levels of anxiety, and some even more so than that. I'm just going to move on fast, and we'll come back to Kimberly's question in a second. But from the employer's perspective, they are thinking, their problems in their head are, I hope they're as good as they said they were, because we were all perfect in the interview. But actually, what's the reality of that? Because sooner or later, the true us, what we're like on a normal day, is going to pop out, which is just to revert back to why it's important not to be unauthentic in interviews, but communicate in a versatile fashion, so that when you're being versatile, you are helping people trust you, but they get to see the real you as well. There's no point in hiding from that. But I don't want to go down that rabbit warren just now. So are they as good as they thought they were? Thank goodness we've got someone in place. That means I can get on with my job. Oh, no, it doesn't. It means you've got to look after them. It hasn't finished there, and people just go, oh, you're in, boom, bye. That's terrible. And what if we've made a mistake? Me or I or we. The reason a lot of these positions, especially at senior leader level, are taking so long, 9, 10, 11, 12 interviews, is no one's brave enough to make a decision, because what if they get it wrong? And what if they were the one that said, this is the right person? How does it look on their job? How's it going to impact the team? How's it going to impact everyone's lives? So there's all these things going on. So both sides are sitting with effectively a fear-based failure mindset already in play. Is it any surprise that it goes wrong? Because we know what we think about, what we focus on, what we believe to be true, and what we're looking for will become our reality. It's all due to the reticular activating system, written about it in the book. You'll get to read it all. But anyway, you can look up the RAS. So behind all these problems, this source is fear-based. It's a fear of failure. It's a fear of change, which is really normal. And our brains don't like change, and they don't like failure a lot of the time. So they don't like fear, because you're using up energy that you could be using to breathe, stay alive, run away from certain death, etc. So your brain is working against you effectively whilst this change and this newness is going on. Should just see what has been said in the comments.
So Kimberly said, what about unspoken rules or values based on leadership culture? And Leslie says, cultural fit. Do I naturally fit into the actual organizational structure? And then Danny questions that, and he quite rightly, is cultural fit actually a good thing? Ooh, unlikely. And we've all talked about diversity and having diversity. So I think that's where he's going there. And Leslie then answers, says, Danny, true. And if not, can I be part of the positive change?
Oh, yes. It's
wrong, finger pointing, and then you get the self-preservation brigade.
You do. And I'm going to say something here which is going to, oh God, do I dare? Yes, I do.
Dare.
In America, so in the US, this is even worse. And I'm seeing this, and the reason I say that is I'm seeing a lot of this at the moment, because when the decisions are made in the US, there is a big fear-based culture there, because they can lose their jobs so quickly. I think a 2-week window out.
This is typical, yeah.
And this is a whole other topic, but that is driving the wrong behaviors and everything. But let's not, anyway, the point is there is a fear to change. There is a reaction to change, and we go on high alert. And when we're high alert, we are feeling more tense. And when we're feeling more tense, we're not able to be our very best selves, which means we can't show up and shine like the amazing employee or employer that we bought into. So that's really annoying. And that leads to disappointment and everything else. But anyway, the fear thing is happening in our brain, the employer's brain, and everyone else's brain that you're then going to meet and work with. So what can we do about it? So there is a solution, and the solution has got to be based on lowering tension and fear and the feeling of threat in ourselves. Some people say that the solution is a strategy, and I'm sorry, but the strategy is only as good as a person executing it. So if your mindset ain't right and you haven't controlled your own feelings of fear and tension and everything else, and guess what? The strategy is going to suck. So books like The First 90 Days based on strategy, brilliant. No behaviors in it whatsoever. That's where my book comes in. Not that I'm plugging it or anything. But anyway, so what do we do? First thing is mindset. We've got to manage our mindset. The results we achieve come from the mindset that's driving the actions that we take to get to the results, not the other way around. So we can't just go in and go, I'm going to act and do this and have meetings and I'm going to do the right strategy. We've got to have the mindset and the skills to drive that in the right way. So very quickly, if you're thinking, feeling, or doing something that is associated with a negative outcome, oh God, I'm going to fail. What if they don't like me? This person's not going to be as good as we thought they were. I'm not sure I like them now. How is that going to play out in what you do, how you behave, how people feel about you? Because remember, we're leaking this all the time. I won't know that Vanessa, just because she started as the head of marketing in our company, that she's nervous. I'll just think, oh, she's being weird. And then I'll feel tense towards her and our relationship will be more difficult. So notice what you're focusing on, first of all. Think about what you're saying to yourself, what you're thinking and what you're doing, and switch it up. It sounds so easy, doesn't it? This is a case of faking it till you make it a little bit. Well, a lot of it actually. And that's okay, because your brain will believe what you're telling it. So choose to tell it something that's helpful. It doesn't mean take your eye off the ball and don't be on enough of an alert to notice when things are going wrong. But it means switch the focus to the right things, which is, I'm going to achieve this. This is going to be great. I've got this. And if I haven't, I'll ask for help.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like that don't think of the pink elephant theory, because as soon as you have it in your mind, it's there, isn't it? So it's
That's all
better.
I've got now, Melinda, is a pink elephant in my head.
Yeah, sorry. Um,
Yeah.
But by flipping that to, instead of, oh, what could I do wrong, to how can I help, or how can, what's the better contribution I can make? If you're thinking that, same result, same activity, but different mindset, then that will lead to a more positive result. Is that
Well,
your?
it'll lead to a different result anyway. And what we're trying to do here, and the whole purpose of the book in itself, actually, and the work that I do, is to give people more control over what happens to them. And people think, oh, it happened to me again, or this boss didn't like me, or this team didn't accept me. And whenever you drill down into that and really see what's happened, they've done something to contribute to that. They were part of that relationship. So we really need to be very careful about what we're thinking, what we're feeling, what we're doing, because that comes out in everything that we do and every action that we take. It's not easy to switch it up, but it is possible. So notice that you're doing it. Notice and accept that change elicits a fear response to start with. Understanding change is really important. Understand what's going on in your head, and then learn to pick new thoughts, new feelings, new behaviors that will take you towards where you really want to go, not where you don't want to go. I've just seen something come in from Danny.
Yeah, so Danny says, is it Kobe? Kobe Bryant said that he was excited by losing because it meant that he had new things to learn and exploit.
Yeah, and this isn't about always getting it right. This is about taking more control over your future and making sure that you are safer in your job for longer and enjoying it more. That's what it's all about, because then you can contribute more. But when you're starting a new job, of course, there's going to be anxieties and things that get in the way. So this is really just, how can I minimize that and maximize my ability to shine, so that I stay as long as I want, and I give as much as I can, and I add real value to the organization, and feel good about it. So the second thing is ask for and provide certainty and clarity. Clear, honest conversations around the vision of the organization. Hopefully you'll have had those during your interview stage. I say hopefully because a lot of people don't. Or if they do, they've half heard it, or they've half been told something. We need to go back in and remember that if you don't know which direction you're driving in, you're not going to end up in the right place. So you need to know what the vision is. You need to know what your priorities are, so that you can then make sure that your goals are right and you know what success looks like. The amount of people that I speak to that do not know the answer to this, and the amount of employees that don't know how to give the answer to this, is terrifying, and it contributes to the massive failure rate. Because we think we know, no one challenges it, and then in 3 months' time, the person who was onboarding comes in and says, I've done this, and the employee says, I didn't want you to do that. You failed. Hold on. How did I? Whose fault? Whose fault is that? Both sides. So as the employee, insist on it, or at least agree it's ambiguous, and you won't be held, you won't be in trouble for it being ambiguous, and you will do X, Y, Z and get approval for that. As the employer, come on. If you don't know what your vision is, get with the program, figure it out, because you need to know where you're going, because it's bad for business for you and the whole organization. But help these people surpass their onboarding expectations by at least giving them a fair chance. So what does success look like in 1, 3, 6, 12 months time? I want to know all of that. And if you can't tell me, allow me to make it up, so that when I come to you, you know what we're looking at, you know how to give me the feedback on how I'm doing. Kimberly says, yes, I agree. We're in control of our own outcome. I tell my son, you are not stuck. Oh, yeah, very true.
Yeah, it's that whole idea, isn't it, that you can't just say, oh, it's my boss's fault, or it's his fault, he didn't give me this. It takes two people to tango, doesn't it? And you've got to ask for what you need and demand on it in some cases if it's not forthcoming. Or as you say, come to an agreement that, okay, you haven't shared your expectations, therefore I'm going to work on this and I'm going to work to this.
Yeah,
Yes.
And the thing is, they might be really grateful of that. And sometimes organizations are shifting and their priorities are shifting and they just don't know. And they, at a very senior level, they might be expecting you to come in and solve that for them. That's cool. But just be clear.
Yeah.
Am I setting this up for myself, or have you set it up and I don't know what it is yet?
Well, and be aware too that in setting those, 3 month, 6 month, 9 month plus goals, that those can evolve, right? And they probably should evolve.
Mm-hmm.
So don't just set it and forget it, because at the 3 month point, let's revisit that 6 month and see what's going on there. And do any changes there feed into the 12 month? Because I think where a lot of companies kind of miss opportunities, let's say, is maybe they're good at setting those initial goals. And maybe that's on a checklist for onboarding. And yes, we have to get these goals in and biff, 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 box ticked. But that's only part of it, right? Because I think that's where the challenge is, where all of a sudden, if you wait till like the 12-month review period and you're looking back at these goals that were set in conjunction with your manager, and you realize the role is completely changed, or if you're looking at it with an employee and you realize what their scope has completely changed, that's not great. So there should have been more visibility of that on a progressive basis. So I think even though change is something that is difficult, it is, in some cases, it is necessary for this. And we can't do a good service to our teams if we're in leadership by just doing the set it and forget it box ticking exercise, which I think that's where a lot of companies go wrong, to be honest.
So Leon has put a message in confirming what we were talking about before about if you start from that basis of fear and negativity, that's where you're going. So he says in his last few jobs, sales-based, he found it was more focused on negative and finding fault than working on a resolution to the problem. And Sarah will tell you that they were probably set up to fail because people they get scared. They don't like change. They think they need somebody to come in and save it. But when somebody comes in, it's different.
Shields up.
And rather than set you up for success, they're going to try and cover their backs that it's going to fail.
You just reminded me of a client that I'm working with at the moment, and she had gone in. She does a lot of data and change,
right?
And she was brought in to do something and just found resistance day after day after day, because everything that she was talking about, they knew they needed, but it terrified them. Yeah. So in the end, she gets removed out of the business because they don't like what they're hearing, even though it's the truth, but they weren't ready for the truth. And so, one of the conversations I had with this client was, how can you be more sure next time they're ready for it? Because they might be there, but...
And I think there's an aspect too, because in a lot of the projects I deal with, we're going into clients there's always going to be people who are resistant to change. Mm-hmm. So there's an element of kind of psychology and change management, even if your job description doesn't include the words change management.
Completely.
It should. And so you can increase your chances of success, not guaranteed, but increase your odds in an environment where you're brought in to instigate change, but there's a lot of resistance. By acknowledging the fears, going back and looking at some of these sessions that we've done in the Business Brunch with Sarah, where we're talking about change, and I've done a few on change, and work within that as part of it being kind of a psychological process and a mindset shift, to then get ready for people to take on board your brilliant new plan. You can't just go steaming in and say, here's the plan, here's where we're going, without setting people up to receive that.
Absolutely. I just want to come to the sort of the final point. It's not the final point, there's more, but I wanted to stick to 3 for today. And it does link into what you were saying before, Melinda, about making sure if the goalposts
for our Canadian clients.
The goalposts do move. Of course they do. If a business is good, it's evolving all the time. I know there has to be business as usual going on, but there's always stuff to be done and to think about and to be creative about and do things differently and better. So the third part of this work that I look at is thinking about providing and asking for. This isn't just being given it, but asking for effective support. And when I'm talking about support, it isn't just checking in, hey, how you doing? You know, you all right? Settled in all right? Do you know where the cups of tea are and stuff? No, it's not that. It's feedback, which is a two-way street. So feedback isn't just sitting waiting to be told you're doing this well, this is great, or as some people are saying, you're doing this wrong, you haven't done this well enough, it's not fast enough. But it's also about how you can show that you need to join up the dots between this is where we started, this is where you want to go. So you remember on a dot-to-dot picture, you don't know what the picture is going to look like, but you've got an idea. When you're going through this process, you are helping to join those dots in your employer's mind and your colleagues' minds to help them see how you are creating the vision that you talked about. Otherwise, we just assume that people are going to know about the work we're doing and that we're doing a good job. And people forget to tell others, this is what I've been doing, this is the impact it's had, and giving their feedback as well. So they can join up your feedback and you can give, and the receiver's brain's going, oh my God, actually, you're doing a great job. So that you don't get to the next 3-month review and they go, we haven't done anything. I don't know what you've been doing. There's also coaching and skills development. So I hate this term, soft skills. God, they're not. They're the hardest skills ever because they're all to do with your brain, and your brain does weird stuff. But I talk about in the book about the leader's superpowers. There are plenty of things a leader needs to be able to do, but if you can't communicate effectively and you aren't versatile in your communication, your ability to build trust and lower tension is horrendous. It just dives. Emotional intelligence, underneath all of that is emotional self-awareness, emotional self-control, being able to be empathetic, all of that. Understanding change, we just talked about that, understanding the process of change and how we behave as we go through change. Irrespective of what the change is, the process is the same. And how to provide the 5 human psychological needs, which every employee and employee needs to feel safe enough, to feel fulfilled enough, to perform well enough to exceed in the role that they're in. And then on top of that, there's all the tools you need to do the job, like your phone, your computer, your car, your office, I'm not talking about that. Those have to be done. And they get done usually. What doesn't get done is looking after this. And if you believe, like many of us do, that your mindset drives your actions, which drive your results, why the heck aren't we focusing on people's brains more first? And if we did, what difference would that make to the failures that we're seeing? So just very quickly, the payoff is if your tension's lower, people feel safer, people feel more empowered, supported, they can perform beyond expectations every time. They become more creative. They're enjoying it more, which means they perform better. Our ability to solve problems is improved. Our ability to make decisions is faster and better. We build trust faster. We make allies quicker. All the things that you actually need to do when you're starting in a new role, in a new position. It leads to better onboarding. It leads to lower failure rates. It leads to less money and time being wasted. The other thing it leads to is less ill health. The amount of people I see who are properly ill through this, through stress and tension, physical and mental illness. And I'm not talking they've gone psycho. I just mean, anxiety and stress, which are very debilitating to people. And it doesn't have to be like that. And that is what I'm working on right now, and will be for some time, I think. So who wants to get on my bus and join me?
That's fantastic. But it made me think, because the whole point of there's a couple of comments. The whole point about starting from a place of fear. And when you start in a new role, you've got a probationary period, haven't you? Mm-hmm. You've got your 3 months or your 6 months. And that's supposed to give you a cushion. It's supposed, but the actual idea of it is also you've got to perform.
Yes,
you've got to improve yourself. But it's supposed to be a cushion of security, isn't it? But it's actually
and you're right.
I feel like it, does it? No,
you're just saying
before then you're out.
You're saying you're on probation. The word probation has a negative connotation to it, which makes our brains go into threat state. So. There's so many bits when you start picking into it. The words that we use, the way we say them, when they're given. I mean, things like that are just, really good point, Vanessa. We're setting people up to fail.
Yeah. So Andy says some of this discussion reminds him of a chapter about professionalism in Robert C. Martin's book, The Clean Coder. You listen to it while stuck in traffic on the weekend, obviously a short read, unless the traffic was really bad, Andy. And it's on and it's very challenging. A recommended read. It's just a small part of what Sarah's covered, but worthwhile. So that's interesting. And Paul says employers should be sharing their commitments to the new employee from day one, not calling it probation, maybe. This is where we need you to be after 3 months, then here after 6, 9, 12, etc. Review, reset, progress. Employees should have the solid framework in place. And if new starter begins to go off track or feel they don't have the skills, what support is available to bridge the skills gap? Most of all, it needs to be exciting for employer and employee.
Really good point is things go wrong. We are human. We make mistakes. We mishear things sometimes and we're misguided sometimes. So if it goes wrong, not to suddenly assume that, oh, we were right, it was the wrong place or it was the wrong employee. We go back to that threat state. Remember, our brains we're made to think in threat to keep ourselves alive. So we have to actively take ourselves out of that. But it's very easy to go back into it. Letting people know that sometimes things go wrong, and if they do, we'll handle it. As long as, if you've lost me £1 million, I might be a bit unhappy, but we will handle it. And this is where you go for support. It's all part of these 5 human psychological needs and the leader and manager practices that sit under that. I mean, this is, as I said, scratching the surface. There's tons underneath all of this.
So much we could go into with it.
Yeah.
I tend to, I like to tell, I've got some rather junior people that I'm mentoring along at the moment. And for most of them, it's their first kind of proper career type job. And they're poor people are so afraid to make a mistake. And so, I've been telling them that, you can't innovate without mistakes. It's impossible. And you can't have creative thinking without having things not quite work the way you planned. So, it's like, as long as what they've done has a basis in a good business objective, you know what I mean? As long as they can show rational logic and say, well, we tried this and it didn't work, but as long as you tried it from a good standpoint, you're not going to get in trouble. It's like, where I tell people where you will get in trouble is if you make that mistake, but then you kind of try to blame it on somebody else, or you don't address it, or you try to hide it. That's when we have problems, and I will not tolerate that. But everybody, you can't do something right without doing a couple things wrong.
Yeah, absolutely right.
If you just do the 100% safe route all the time and don't take any innovative steps and don't try anything new, your company will stagnate. So any company that is pushing the safe route is a company that is not destined to expand and is not destined for ultimate success, because they will be net moving backwards as the rest of the world moves forwards.
You're absolutely right. And I had a call from a company over in Canada last week saying, they'd like me to come and do a couple of hours on mindset. They've got a very introverted workforce, introverted preference workforce, who are all risk averse. And it's prevent that, they don't want to make a mistake. They don't want to get it wrong because they want to be known as the experts. And she really wants to help them feel safe to try things that are new, so that they can make mistakes and feel safe to do that, so that the business can evolve. Otherwise, it's going to get stuck. Exactly what you've said.
I think kind of the whole kind of Gen Z have grown up to be very risk averse, but I think after the last 2 years of massive change to all of us, I think we're all a bit risk averse as well, haven't we? So
we are
in that safe environment, so we can feel empowered to be. There are lots of comments coming up. Let's just really quickly, because we are running towards the end. Danny says, Paul, if employers ask themselves in 6 months, what would it take for me to feel like I've made the right hire? They'd look completely differently at what successful hires look like. That's a really nice point. Leslie says, thanks, got to run, great insights. Paul says, in my view, employers want instant returns. It doesn't work like that. Sometimes they need to slow down to speed up.
Oh, they do, Paul. 100%. They really do. Be realistic.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And experience is what you get when you don't get what you want. You cannot innovate without experience. So let's think about that one. And Andy says, absolutely right, Melinda. Don't fear failure. Not failure, but low aim is the crime. In great attempts, it is glorious even to fail. Bruce Lee.
Bruce Lee.
Hold on a second. I'll get that in a minute. I need that quote in something. It's got to go somewhere. That's brilliant. Thank you so much, everybody, for getting involved, getting stuck in and sharing your thoughts and the questions as well. And if there is anything else that you are particularly interested in that you want us to talk about, to work on, let us know. You know, we're here for you. So tell us what you're interested in, what you want more of, and we will do our best to serve.
Absolutely.
Until then, yeah. So if it's about consultancy or marketing or personal branding or mindset and that unshakable self-belief, let us know what you want to see, and we will see you next week, Monday at the same time.
Yes, thank you everybody for joining in. We look forward to seeing you next Monday. And if you enjoyed this show, feel free to share with your network and get them involved for future sessions.
Take care, everyone. See you next week.
Take care. Have a good week. Bye-bye.